So, St. Anthony of Padua today, he was born in Portugal. He's Portuguese. Padua is in Italy, and he has the name of Anthony of Padua, but his origins is from Portugal. He's Portuguese. He had entered into an Augustinian order when he was 15, but because there were some mendicant friars of the Franciscan order, which had just started, by the way, because St. Anthony was contemporary with St. Francis. They knew one another. And so these Franciscan friars had entered into Portugal, and they were preaching the gospel and their way of life, their simplicity, their poverty, attracted St. Anthony. And so he ended up joining the Franciscan order. He was very well known for his preaching abilities. He was sent off on a tough mission there in North Africa, where he could have easily have been a martyr. And he suffered the hardships of that mission out there. And he returned to Italy, and on returning to Italy, he ended up passing through a place where some of his Franciscan brothers were being ordained, and the invited preacher didn't turn up, so he was prompted and asked to get up and to preach. And he preached so well that he was ordered from then on in to be like an itinerant preacher, to be going on missions and to preach. He preached so well there in France, where there was a lot of heretics. He was known as being the hammer of the heretics. And he's also famous for asking for his help when you have lost something. I kind of have fostered a friendship with him because I've lost quite a number of things in my life, and so I've had recourse to him on many occasions, and he has got me out of trouble, let's say, and I've ended up finding the things that I have lost. And where does that come from? Well, it says that one time his breviary, the prayer that the priests pray every day, and the religious had gone missing, and so he prayed for its return. And what had happened is that one of the novices who had got off and left the order had stolen it. And fruit of his prayer anyway, that it would be returned, the young novice came back and he handed him over the breviary. So that's the origin of praying to St. Anthony for lost or stolen objects. So that is St. Anthony. He was a man of gentleness. You often see him with the image of Jesus, the child Jesus in his arms. And talking about gentleness, that coincides well with today's gospel, in which Jesus speaks of the evil of anger. He's given a teaching on the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. But Jesus says it's not enough that, because belonging to that, it's not just not killing your brother physically. We do them harm, and we can kill them spiritually by holding anger and expressing anger to our brothers. So anger is ruled out even. See how Jesus lifts the bar even higher. He didn't come to negate or to brush aside the commandments. He lifted the bar, didn't it? Making it more demanding. So even anger is prohibited. And so what is the solution to anger? Well, it is the virtue of gentleness. Jesus said, learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. Meekness is that act of being gentleness. It's the opposite of anger, of imposing oneself. So meekness, we have to practice meekness in three ways: meekness towards God, meekness towards neighbour, meekness towards ourselves. Meekness towards God, well, what would that consist of? Well, in being subject to his designs over you. And his designs of you are transmitted to you in all the circumstances of your life, adverse and good. So even in the adverse moments, not to be rebellious and not to spit out the doddy, the dummy, like a child being petulant. No, but to see that everything that happens in our life comes to us from the hand of God. And with that faith in mind, that would help us to be more submissive in the moment. So that's an example of being meek towards God. Meekness towards neighbour comes to mind the example of Mother Teresa of Calcutta when she was asking her for alms for her poor, and a man spat at her when she asked of him. I think I've explained this anecdote before, and she didn't get angry with that. He spat in her hand as she held it out to him, and she brought that hand and held it to her chest and said, "That's for me." She held out the other hand and said, "Now for my poor." See, that's being meek with one's neighbour. And that comes about by humility, true knowledge of self. Why didn't she get angry with that? Like one said that she was right to get angry. No. She in her humility knows who she is. She is a poor, useless servant and is worthy of much more because of her sins. So humility would bring her to that action of being able to be meek and not to get riled up in the face of such an offensive action as that. So, and there you have an example of meekness being helped and motivated by humility, and meekness towards oneself. We're being patient with oneself. We're all full of weaknesses and defects, and we're all sinful, and we have to be compassionate with ourselves, learn to be compassionate with ourselves, having patience with ourselves. Many times we get angry and impatient with our own weaknesses, and at the end of the day, it's just because our own image has been wounded, and that's fruit of our pride. So again, humility helps us to be meek in that sense. So we can ask St. Anthony through his intercession, meek and gentle St. Anthony, that he help us to find and to practice and to grow in that virtue of meekness. Amen.